On Passover at the Seder, we read in the Haggadah the following statement, that each one of us in every generation is required to view ourselves as if we personally left Egypt. And then some passages from the Torah are quoted, including one that says that God took us out of Egypt in order to give us the promised land. But we weren't actually in Egypt, so how are we supposed to view ourselves that way? Here's a thought. The sages tell us that during the 9th plague, the plague of darkness, God killed 4 out of 5 Jews, 80% of the Jews in Egypt. He did it during the plague of darkness so that the Egyptians wouldn't know what was going on. Rashi, the greatest of the commentators, explains that the Jews who were killed were those who were wicked and who did not want to leave Egypt. So Rashi's plainly hinting to us that if a Jew in Egypt was wicked but wanted to leave, he or she would have been welcomed with open arms. So we have to remember, all Jews who are around today, each of us, is here because of the decision that our ancestors made back in Egypt to be one of the 20% that elected to leave Egypt. And we should ask ourselves the following question. Imagine you walk out to get the mail one day, and in the mail is a letter addressed to you. It's an invitation, engraved on very high quality card stock. The return address is heaven. You're curious. You give it to your neighbor who happens to be a scientist at NASA. He analyzes it, gives it back to you and says, I don't know where that invitation's from, but I can tell you this, it's not from Earth. Now you're really curious. You open it with some trepidation. It says, Dear so-and-so, your name, please allow me to introduce myself. I am God, the Lord Almighty, and I'm inviting you on a historic mission. I'm going to be taking all Jews who elect to join me on the wings of eagles, Al Kanfei Nisharim, to the promised land, to Israel. Please indicate your interest by checking one of the boxes below and returning the envelope. Box number 1, Dear God, thank you so much for the invite. Looking forward, count me and my family in. Box 2, Dear God, I'm flattered by the invite, but I have to respectfully decline. What percentage of Jews nowadays do you think would choose box 1? My guess, probably the same 20% that chose that box back in Egypt and elected to leave. You'd think that all of the observant Jews would check box 1, but I'm not so sure. There'd be some who just renovated their kitchen or put in a new swimming pool or have some plans or reservations or tickets who would decline. And then I'm sure you'd have some non-observant Jews, some Jews who believe in God, but they're not sure if he wrote the Torah, or they're not sure if there's a God, or they're sure, or so they think, that there is no God. But they're Jewish. They have Jewish pride. Maybe they're thrill seekers. Maybe they have FOMO, fear of missing out. And they say, you know what? I'm Jewish. Count me in. Welcome aboard. For those of us who pray every day that God should gather all the exiles and take us back to the promised land, we should think about what it is we're praying for, and we should mean what we say. About a dozen years ago, my family outgrew the house in which we were living. So we bought a new house up the block and we were renovating it. It was just before the Sukkot holiday, so I was saying goodnight to my daughters in their room. They were around 8 and 6 years old at the time. So I said, girls, this year we're going to be on our Sukkah out on our driveway. But next year, where are we going to be? Meaning and expecting them to say, in our new house, in our nicer Sukkah. And instead they looked at each other and they both shouted out, in Jerusalem. And I said to myself, I am a fool. I'm supposed to be a good Jewish parent. At the end of the Passover Seder, we sing Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim with our families. Next year in Jerusalem. And here I was instead, trying to motivate my daughters to get excited about next year up the block. We all have to keep our eye on the ultimate goal. All Jews. The gathering of those exiles on the wings of eagles when we head together back to the promised land, to Israel. Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem.